Welcome back, everyone, to our last session and workshop of Summer Community Days. I am joined here by Donny Flynn, who is a customer data architect here at Census. He's going to be teaching us for the next 2 hours about building account scoring models. There's a little bit of recommended, not required, but heavily recommended reading for a little bit of background that I will drop in chat. If you are a DBT user and are familiar with the infamous jaffles, this will probably look pretty familiar to you. But Donny will be going through about 20 minutes of lecture and instruction, and then we'll go into the breakout rooms for a little bit of hands-on time. And he will make himself available to kind of walk you guys through a tactical kind of model for things. And then we will reconvene at the end, discuss some of the work, and answer any questions y'all have. So with that, I will hand that over to Donny.
Thank you so much, Allie. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Really looking forward to kind of walking through overall account scoring. And as Allie mentioned, this is going to be a hands-on workshop. So very excited to get you kind of some hands-on experience in terms of doing product-led growth account scoring using this Jaffle-Gaggle example that Allie was referencing in terms of some of the reading and some stuff that we're going to send into the chat soon if you haven't taken a peek at this. So there's a GitHub repo as well as like a blog post that kind of describes a little bit of the problem. And don't worry if you haven't seen it yet. I'm about to kind of walk through at a high level what this is, as well as what the problem statement is. So that's going to be that background piece, which is kind of this presentation right now. Then what we're going to do is we're going to jump into breakout groups. So it's going to break into a couple of groups depending on how many people are in the session. And then the goal of that would be to actually work on an account scoring model or kind of a thought process for what that model should look like and how to leverage the data that's available on the repo kind of within the data seeds that are there in GitHub. And then ideally we'll kind of, I'll go in a little bit more detail in terms of kind of what the format of that will be and how we want to actually do that at the end. And then we're going to come back, regroup here what the teams did, and then kind of talk about some overall reflections as well as some Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into what is Jaffle-Gaggle. So Jaffle-Gaggle is a fictional product. It's basically a social app where there are workspaces where you can share with friends recipes for a Jaffle that you can create. You can view recipes, you can favorite recipes, and then you can actually order the recipe from there that then can get delivered to you, and you can make a Jaffle. And this is more of a business-to-business application in which different organizations can pay for different paid plans from the Jaffle-Gaggle Institute. And as part of that corporate offering, it enables kind of a team building and community among the employees. So in terms of like, what does that data look like? So there are 3 event types. There are orders that are placed, recipes that are favorited, and recipes that are viewed. In terms of the data structure, each workspace is called a Jaffle, is called a Gaggle. And then there's also a user's data set. So there's a user's data set, there's a Gaggle data set, there's an events data set, and all of those are in the data seed files and within the DBT repo. And those are the 3 kinds of events. Now you'll notice as part of this, there is no actual kind of account entity. And that's kind of part of the reason for that blog post as well as that DBT repo was in terms of how do we do identity resolution in terms of identifying corporate accounts that then could be reached out to by the sales team. And that's similarly what we're going to be doing here today, which is talking about how we want to score these corporate accounts in terms of which sales teams should reach out to. So if there are any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A and we can kind of cover them. But among these different workspaces with Jaffle-Gaggle sales, there are activity from different users. Some users have their personal email, some have their corporate email addresses, and the sales team has created certain opportunities that have had varied levels of success. Now, these deals are also within that data set, and you'll see kind of the close date, you'll see who that user was, what that user's email was, who was that corporate, what is that deal's name, and what was that deal amount, and whether that was closed won or closed lost. So quick sales terminology there. If for those that are not familiar, closed won means that the account actually ended up purchasing the Jaffle-Gaggle platform. Closed lost means that it did not. And any entry within there was an active opportunity. So it actually did become a sales deal that the Jaffle-Gaggle sales team was working towards. And that's really the project in the soon to be assigned kind of breakout groups, is to build an account scoring model based on the product activity data. So those events that we were just talking about, to help the Jaffle-Gaggle sales team filter through the noise of all of the events that are happening on the platform to really optimize and leverage the time as best as possible when reaching out to accounts, and which accounts they should reach out to that can hopefully drive revenue for Jaffle-Gaggle. So in terms of, and why is this a priority? It's because Jaffle-Gaggle is growing like gangbusters. The events are skyrocketing and pretty much going vertical, and the sales team can't scale as fast as this is scaling, because the sales team needs to be able to prioritize accounts and also prove out the sales motion for this kind of social application. And with that sales data that I was talking about earlier, with those different opportunities and the different results of those different opportunities, we need to figure out how we can prioritize this growth. And I went the wrong way. Here we go. So want to quickly talk a little bit about account scoring. So there are a number of different ways that we can do this. So we can think about like a stoplight model where certain accounts are in the red zone, like we do not want anyone to reach out to them. Certain ones are in this yellow zone, like maybe it's worth reaching out to. Certain ones are green zone, we should absolutely reach out to them. There's another way of thinking about it as if kind of more of a quantitative approach. So kind of within from a score of 1 to 10, kind of numeric, or 0 to 10 or 0 to 1, and just kind of putting that as that response variable. And then there's another one, which is just hot versus cold, whether or not this account is a hot account that we want to prioritize, or it's a cold account that we want prioritized. So that's one approach. Another one is, another open question here is, do we want to use kind of the ideal customer profile, which is kind of the ICP jargon there. And then also, what kind of behavior, what is a good customer for Jaffle-Gaggle? So not only potentially customers or accounts that buy, but potentially after they buy, is their adoption continuing to increase? Are they using more of the product? Are they using less of it? What is that behavior that we strategically want? That's a question that I want to kind of leave open for the different breakout groups. And then how do we want to, and then this last one is really interesting. It's how do we want to set up the response variable? With any kind of scoring model, any kind of analytics model, predictive model, we want to figure out what is that objective variable that we want to optimize. And here the question is, do we want to use all deals created, whether it was a won deal or a lost deal? Because at some point that deal came in and the sales team actually thought that it was going to close. So should that be our goal line in terms of how we want to score accounts? Should we use only the deals that actually came across the finish line and actually were closed won? Do we want to weigh by different revenue amounts? Do we want to, or some combination of any of all three of those? And really what this is meant to be is like an opportunity to be creative, to potentially include other pieces of enrichment outside of the data sets that are provided, and think about a low weight way to operationalize this. Because that's really what this club and what this summer community days are about, is like, how can this actually add value to an organization, and add value today, but also in 9 months when that exponential growth that Jaffle-Gaggle is seeing is at the point where the sales team is not going to be able to keep up. And I think it goes, definitely creativity is very much encouraged in terms of thinking about how we want to build out a scalable solution here, and how the sales team and the collaboration between the data team and the sales team within Jaffle-Gaggle can leverage this data to be successful. You're going to have 70 minutes to build on these data sets. Ideally, there's some sort of SQL, DBT, Python, R that informs what this model looks like. And then as such, kind of each breakout group is going to nominate one team captain to come up on stage and to present to the group what the model does, how you arrived at it, and what you set up. And this is really meant to be a fun exercise, a low stress exercise to potentially write some SQL and problem solve in a group. I'm going to be dropping in and out of the different breakout rooms as soon as we set them up in just a couple minutes here, or just a couple, maybe about a minute. But if there are any questions before we do so, please feel free to pop them in the chat, and we can kind of cover them now. Really looking forward to this as an exercise, and please let me know if there's any questions. Yeah, I'm just gonna pause for a sec. Hello, everybody. Thanks for waiting. I'm gonna go ahead and jump on and share my screen here. Basically want to walk through kind of where the data is at, and we can kind of go ahead and run just an overall, like how we are going to approach this account scoring problem. And here I have kind of this Jaffle-Gaggle data set all right here, including with the deals, the CSV, which is around kind of what that close date is, what's the amount of the deal, as well as what is the deal name, the status, whether it's won or lost, and that user that's here. So I'm going to go ahead and from that Jaffle-Gaggle kind of data set, as well as that blog post, kind of walk through a little bit of what the logic is here in terms of some of these joins. And what I want to go ahead and do is I want to do just a quick like association of the deal with the users, or with that specific gaggle, or with that specific organization. So let me just do a quick new file here. Staging deals.sql, and I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Source as from ref deals. And I'm going to go ahead and do just a quick cleanup here. As with the deals, we need to go ahead and just do a quick cleanup here of this amount. Now, let me just try to figure out exactly. So we want to select that close date. We want to select that amount. We're going to need to clean that. Clean. And we're going to need to do the deal name, which is helpful. Deal name, as well as the deal stage. And we want to go ahead and also pull in that email. So, okay, so let me just quickly do a quick little clip here. So, like anything, oh, sorry, you're seeing the green room. What I want to do is just find a quick string, dollar value to int snowflake SQL. Anyone has this and they would feel comfortable popping in the chat, that would be super helpful. But I think what I can do is I can just pop open this. go. Nope, doesn't work. Let's see exactly what this is. Let me stop sharing for a sec. So, thanks for hanging out with me for a second. Sorry, I'm just activating my my Python virtual environment, and I'm about to just run dbt seed for those seed files that we're pulling in. There we go. We got that all running. And it's already on and running. So let me just quickly share my screen. So we have all of these seed files that just loaded. So they're all living within my schema in Snowflake. I kind of have that merge domain. I also have the raw user as well as the deals. And that deal is already loaded. And those other files are loaded. So we're all just about set. And I am going to very quickly just kind of pull up a quick just select star from development.donny.deal. And deals. Perfect. So now we have all of these stages that are right here. So what we want to do is, oh, and awesome, we have that amount. dbt seed took care of everything for me. I didn't even have to do it. So what we want to check is if deal stage equals 1, if the stage equals 1, that means that I'm just going to put a 1, otherwise I'm going to put a 0. If 1. Actually, you know what I'm going to do here is now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and build some response variables for this. And kind of as I was talking about kind of in this overall workshop is we wanted to think about kind of how do we want to use all of the deals that have been created? Do we want to use only the closed won deals? Do we want to weigh by the revenue amount? Kind of the way that I'm thinking about this, at least, and I would love to hear some thoughts in the chat. But basically what I'm thinking about doing is, I'm gonna put on Python here, just so I can kind of take notes. But I want to weigh the deals by the amount, and by if 1. So basically, if a deal is 1, I want to weigh it 3 times more than a lost deal. But I don't, if a deal gets to the lost stage, it still means that there was an opportunity created. So I still want to also weigh that amount. So for this one, it would be 3 times. So I'm going to weigh it by like 120,000. This one I'm going to weigh by 30,000. For this deal, I'm going to weigh it by 10,000. So you're going to see kind of if that 4 times becomes 12 times because it was 1 versus lost. And that's just, I'm just kind of creating this objective function here on the fly. But I think it's going to be probably pretty helpful for what we want to think about and how we want to do that association between those different events and kind of what actually is an account that we do want to pursue, because that was a 1 deal with kind of a revenue amount that's associated to it. But even those closed lost deals still became deals. So that is still a good signal that we want to look at them a little bit, a little less. So kind of just to overall look at that amount. So the objective that we are optimizing for here is one deals with high revenue. And the equation that we're doing is if 1, 3 times rev amount plus if lost amount. And now you're going to notice that in this example, all we have is the event data, and we have kind of the workspace data as well as some of this user information. All of these companies are fake. I hate to spoil anyone's bubble or burst anyone's bubble, but unless, as far as I know, many of these domains actually do not exist. But what we're going to do is we would, in other instances, we would be able to leverage kind of a third-party kind of data enrichment tool to potentially help us inform whether or not this company is a better fit for kind of our sales strategy. So like a tool like Clearbit would be a good one to potentially use. And kind of that would be something that we could do based on the email domain and determine whether or not we want that company to work with them. And kind of on this, there's a lot of really great work that is happening within this space as well. I know that Brett has a very interesting kind of way to think about kind of what is those two axes of kind of a company that wants to talk to us as well as a company that wants to talk to them. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a look here and try to think through. If there are any things that are kind of coming up or kind of anything that's in the chat, please let me know. I'm going to stop sharing for just a quick second. I just want to make sure that everything is good in terms of kind of the DVT setup. And then we're going to potentially just do a couple of changes real quick. If you have any ideas in the chat, I would love to hear them as we kind of get going. So we're just going to go ahead and quickly kind of pull all of these in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to left join from the data sources that are going to come from the corporate accounts. And then that way we're going to do a left join into do a coalesce from 0 versus that amount. That's going to be the proper one that we actually want to use as that response variable. And then we're going to weigh some of these different parameters and then be able to kind of create that scoring model that then the customer success, the sales team will be able to prioritize these different accounts for. So within the data set in terms of kind of the different company attributes that we have available, so I'm going to quickly show kind of what that data set looks like. So it's going to be, I believe it's called Jaffel, Gaggle, corporate accounts. Actually, I want to just select star. So we have the corporate email. We have the total number of workspaces, the number of users that are corporate, the number of events that are corporate, that first event, the most recent event, as well as the number of orders, the first order that's corporate, and then the most recent order that's corporate. And when I say corporate, and when I talk about that as a parameter, those are events that happen through users that are actually using the corporate email domain. So in this case, it would be kind of wizards.co. And then what we also have are the associated orders. So those would be kind of that would be the superset of kind of anything that's a corporate event. But it could also be users that have a personal email. So a Gmail, a Yahoo, as also an email that is also associated within those sub gaggles that are actually tied to that corporate account. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a join from these corporate accounts to the different deals and do a left join based on the from this corporate email. Actually, I'm going to go all the way from users. So I want to pull from the user to the gaggle to the organization that they belong to, because you'll see that some of these actually happen to be the email that's associated with the deal was a personal email. So I'm going to go all the way from the other side. So what I want to go ahead and do is select from the Jaffle Gaggle contacts table, JC, and I think I want to go all the way up. Yeah, I have the Gaggle ID, perfect. Left join. Fax. Oh, I have the corporate email here. Awesome. Or actually, I think I do this. Okay, let's start now. JC dot Great, so I have the Gaggle ID. I have that corporate email here, which is actually going to be the better corporate email, because for that user, we'll only have it if that user is a corporate email. So I want to join all the way up from there. Left join. So yes, and I want to do a left join from here. I see what I want to do now. CTEs for the win. GCA JF corporate email equals a GCA corporate email. Select star. So this is going to be from the contact. And then what I want here is actually that corporate email that I did all of that work to run all the way there just to get that corporate email that's associated with it. And I'm going to quickly actually just resurface that. What was that table exactly? So select star from Jaffle Gaggle, that corporate account. So we did that from that corporate email. And we have all of these different facts that are here already. And then we have like these different kind of first user ID, most active user ID, most orders user ID, which would be different parameters that potentially we could use here. But in this case, I just really want to have that that specific email and like those specific facts that I want to get. And I want to go ahead and pull that out from the deal. And what I want to do is I want to associate these emails, the user emails, to the corporate email, and then with all of those different facts on it. So this is how I want to go ahead and basically get all of the JGCA facts. Star, and then I also want that user email that I want. So jc.email and this is actually the query that I want to run. So let me just go ahead and pause, and let's run this like this. So yeah, now we have each of the user emails. We have kind of who that corporate email was. I also want that jc.user ID as well, because then I can also tie back if that user was in one of those different subsets that I have. So now, because I have this, I want to do a quick join. So contact facts here as select this. And then I also want these same deals here. And then it was just this. With this. I want to do a quick left join to this. Select star d dot star actually, I'm going to go ahead and put just a select star as the deal. Deals as this. Select star from there. And then what I want to go ahead and do is I just want to pull out every single corporate email and the associations and whether or not they were in the actual, whether or not there was a deal created. Because if they were not in the deal that was created, then I want to have that be in the response variable as a 0 for now because of those because of the lack of events. And then we want to go ahead and build some kind of, do a quick exploration in terms of some of these characteristics, such as the number of gaggles, the number of users, potentially the number of events, or the number of orders that have been created, and find out where that highest correlation is to that response variable that we're looking at to see what could be some potential rules that we can actually build out to score some of these accounts. So thank you to all of you who are bearing with me as I write this SQL live and kind of work out the logic live. So I appreciate kind of everyone, and if there's any questions, please feel free to let me know. But this is kind of, my brain is kind of running all over the place as we're thinking through this. So thanks for following along with me. So we have those different contact facts. What I want to go ahead and do is now I want to select d dot star here, and then I also want to select cf dot star as well. And then that is going to be from deals d left join that contact facts cf on d dot email equals cf dot user email. That's just going to get us almost all the way there, but not fully there, because what we're also going to want to do is, yes, we have all of those. We have the close date, we have the deal name, we have that email, we also have that associated corporate account that lives here. But we want to go one step above that, which it would be to grab all of the different corporate accounts, and then we want to coalesce if we were not able to do that join, and we just want to do actually a left join from there to this with the data that we do not have. So kind of from here, I'm actually going to cut this off at the corporate email instead. So just that user just to the corporate email amount. And then this is now these are the accounts with deals. And now I want to do a left join from all of the accounts to there on the corporate account. So I want to select jgca dot star, and I want to do awd dot star jwca from jgca left join accounts with deals awd. Time. Cool. Great. So you're going to see that we're going to get the majority of these ones that had the deals first, but we'll also see towards the end that not all of these had those deals. So kind of with that data frame, let's just go ahead and name this. Data frame. Let's just call this results. So let's go ahead and look at the results. And yeah, this is as we expected. Not all of these actually had kind of a close date because they didn't actually have a deal that was associated with them. And then we have kind of those number of events that are associated, and then kind of the first event that's associated. We can do a quick little exploration in terms of kind of how many of these total organizations actually did have deals that were associated with them. So kind of let's do a quick results. And let's do a results where deal stage is not null. No, none. That's not none in Python, that is. That's not it. Is null. Shape size. Fill in. Yeah. Okay. So 458 that is not null, and then if I want to do the opposite of that, 123. So we have 123 that do have this. We can do a quick frequency check on one lost or null. So let's do a quick little group by. Actually, let's just do this in SQL. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly refactor this. This is not SQL, this is Python. This is SQL. And then deals totals. search by stage. What is that called? It's called deal stage. Yeah, so we see that we have 62 deals that were won, 458 that were lost, that did not even have any deals that were associated, 123 total that ended up having deals. So in terms of like the entire split, kind of 3/4 of the data didn't even have a deal that actually was associated, potentially even a little bit more. So we really do want to find kind of who are the total, like how do we want to find what has been like the history of the accounts that have had the most success with our platform, and how do we want to go ahead and actually leverage this information that we have, and potentially do some enrichment to that information to go ahead and prioritize those. And what we can do is really use this kind of data set kind of with that different SQL, the SQL that we talked about and kind of talked through in terms of which deals had the accounts that were with them, pulling out which of those contacts were actually tied to those deals, as well as what were those accounts that had those deals associated with them. We were able to pull in kind of all of the deals and all of the companies and the different parameters that we want to look at. And we really want to see kind of what are these number of events and some of the categorical information in terms of the behavior or the engagement with the platform, which ones have some of the highest association to what we're looking for in terms of a deal being won. So what we can go ahead and do is also just do some quick, let's just build a couple of quick kind of SQL exploration in terms of these different of some of these different events that we already are tracking, which ones actually end up being the most indicative of success. So we'll go ahead and take a look here. Let's look at average. Let's go ahead and quickly pull the average of all of these. And I'm forgetting snowflake median. Oh, yeah, we can just use median. Let's do a quick initial exploration here. In terms of these deals, let's see. So among won deals, we have kind of that median number of gaggles. We see that that's a higher amount. We also see that among the lost deals, so it kind of orders in terms of number of users in both the average and in the median. We see that it's much higher for a won deal, and then after that it becomes a closed deal and a closed loss deal, and then no deal that's associated. So that is definitely interesting information to see. What's also interesting is that the median number of users is higher than the average number of users, which is very interesting. Which would kind of say that that would skew the other way, as opposed to when the average is generally higher, it means that there would be some long tail values. This almost shows the inverse of that, but there's almost a long tail at the beginning. Oh, no, that's not. I typed in the users. I was like, something looks really weird that would be the case. But I do want to also look at events, because we do see that it's very dramatic here in terms of those events. Average number of events. I'm glad I was talking that through, because that was looking very strange to me, and I was trying to think about how that could be possible in the real domain that we're operating in here. There we go, that looks much better. And we see the same kind of behavior. So for the number of users, the median should always be less than the average, which it is, because we do have those long tail of events. And what we do want to see is something that's pretty dramatic among one deals is this are these number of events. So these are events corporate. So these are events that come from users that were involved, that like registered and did those events with their corporate email domain. We see that that's quite high in terms of that, which is really interesting. Additionally, we do see that the number of users is almost, it goes 6, 9 into 12, so almost +3 each time. We see a similar kind of behavior, even more in terms of the number of gaggles that are associated. So that's pretty high. Obviously, we're not talking about huge subsets of data, but we have a pretty good sense that there's a kind of indicator here in terms of some of these categorical information, which makes sense. And let's look at some other stuff. I want to quickly pause and see if there are any questions or anyone in the chat that kind of has any ideas about kind of where we want to go next from some of these data points, or if maybe there's another approach that we want to think about in terms of how we want to approach the next step. Okay, cool. And so we have the median number of events. I'm just going to quickly, instead of doing what we can do is let's look at one more. Let's also look at some of these data points for associated. But the way that I'm looking at this right now, it seems like what's most pronounced are these number of events. So we see almost a 70 jump, so almost a 50% jump from here to here. Similarly here as well. So that's kind of my hunch here right off the bat would be to look at events as kind of that primary indicator, and to see how close that would get us in terms of building a kind of model that would make predictions, and just with a simple linear regression to see if that could get us there in terms of building us a starting point to build a rule-based model in terms of basically just setting a decision boundary for a certain number of events point where we do want to reach out. We're kind of in the hot cold model because we do not have any external data sources, nothing else about the company now. We can just kind of set after beyond certain thresholds of events, we should reach out or we should not. And kind of we have this data just about ready to go in terms of determining that response variable for that linear regression, whether or not we do want to do the weighting or we don't, as Parth was mentioning, and then we can kind of advance from there. And then we could think about how do we want to actually have our sales team interact with that information, with the hot versus the cold leads to reach out, and then approach it from that way. But I hope that this was a helpful exercise, and I think it's probably going to be I'm happy to kind of write up what and share this notebook in terms of after it's fully completed, in terms of what this account scoring would look like, and would be very interested to hear any thoughts, suggestions, or comments on the overall session, and really appreciate you taking the time to hang out. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was grabbing some water and getting a little work done. Now screen sharing some of the data that we were doing, and kind of just wanted to quickly walk through what's that looking like. So here, as you'll notice, I have kind of this weighted amount that we were talking about earlier. And what I also want to do is just pull in that I basically want to build that out as a 0 if that's null in this. So kind of the accounts with deals is going to be that one. And then what I want to do is actually, let me just quickly walk through that. So I want to do awd.weighted amount, and then I want to do, and I just want to coalesce that to 0 as weighted amount. Great, so we have that weighted amount. We also have the number of events corporate. I'm going to want to look at the results for this. So I'm just going to try to go ahead and just do a quick scatter plot. And what I want to do is I just want to pull up some of these different events. So some of the things that we talked about was the number of events corporate, kind of as the x-axis, and then I wanted to do the y-axis as this weighted amount to just see overall what that looked like. So you'll see kind of that weighted amount does look like a fairly good indicator of the number of events corporate. But let's see if we can go ahead and populate another visualization here to see if we can find something that's a little bit more direct. So let's look at, again, we're just looking at kind of just overall trying to notice some trends here to see what this is going to look like. So for the X order, what we also have is this concept of orders associated. So I'm going to look at kind of orders associated versus this weighted amount to see if we have kind of a little bit of a better split, which it looks like we kind of do here. You're seeing a little bit of less density here, and we're starting to see that become a little bit more apparent here. But let me see if we do one more thing, which would potentially be to find the number of events, like the number of orders that are corporate, to see if that's going to potentially be a little bit more spot on for what we're looking like, for. So we're going to go to number of events, number of orders corporate, and then we're going to do the y-axis again, is that weighted amount. And we do not want a bar chart. We want a point chart. So we do see significantly less density here, and we also do see a little bit less density here, kind of higher density in this zone that we see. So I think kind of as we have like the number of events total is a little bit of a superset of the orders. You'll just see also the magnitude of these numbers is a little larger. And as we look at a little bit more of the concentration here, you'll see that the zeros, which is the weighted amount for deals that were never created, that's showing up kind of almost, we're getting a decent density all the way up to like the 50% mark of the total, even a little bit beyond that here. But here we're seeing that density start to drop off before the halfway mark in terms of the data. So that's looking interesting, as well as this one is also looking quite interesting here, and you're definitely seeing a pretty clear indication that there would be some kind of line of best fit here to kind of point out what that's going to look like. But I think in terms of overall data that we want to look at, I think what's probably going to make the most sense is going to be looking at the total, let's see if we also are able to look at the total days. So all of the events in the data that we have were not it cuts off at December 1st of 2021. So all of these are kind of the last day possible that there could have been a most recent event. So kind of another step would be potentially to look at kind of everything weighted by days in order to properly normalize all of these data points. And we could kind of look at that from that first event to do a quick little date diff in terms of finding what that's going to look like. And then we could do a quick weighting of the events per day. And then we could kind of determine what that events per day mark should be in order to identify what that cutoff might make sense for in terms of that weighted amount that we want to look at. And kind of in terms of the way in which I'm thinking about this right now, in terms of kind of getting some sort of rule-based model that we could at least look at with kind of majority of the data that would be flagged by that rule-based model. We want high signal of that, so we don't want to identify, and there could also be some of these accounts that didn't have a deal associated that actually there might have had a deal, and we might have actually been able to either win that deal or at least have some interesting conversations to potentially move those along. So what we can do as well is just look at maybe some of these percentiles of the different, the total number of orders as that might make sense. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's look at results. Let's look at where results weighted amount is greater than 0. And then we want those values. Let's do the number of orders corporate. And then we also want NP dot percentile. Let's spit out a couple of these values. Let me just make sure this is the right pandas incantation before we got that here. Okay, so let me do a quick little list. Great. And then let's do a quick for I in range. Let's pick a couple percentiles that we want to look at. So let's look at the 5th percentile. Well, actually, let's look at the 10th percentile. Let's look at the 15.2. Let's look at the 0.25, and then let's look at the point. Let's actually look at a little bit more granular. I think that's okay, actually. 1.3 and 0.35 and 0.1. So percentile I is 40%. NP dot percentile I. Oh, I need to know. I need to import NumPy as NP. Nope, that ain't it. I forgot my favorite Python import. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so that's quite funny. So the number of orders corporate, we're seeing that is that the right incantation? No, I don't think it is. Let's see. That's if it's this. Yeah, I think it's that would make sense. So let's look at this. 20, 25, 30, 40. That looks better. Okay, so we're seeing that kind of among the 10%, we have a 31%, like the 31 cutoffs, that's right here. We have the median, let's get always the median as well, 35, 45, 50. So our median is 62. So that's here. That looks pretty high. I think we would miss out. I mean, we're going to miss out on a lot of those accounts, right? We want to definitely make sure that we're able to select many of the deals that we were able to create. And we're going to see that we'll probably get a bulk of them coming in this 30 range. So potentially using one of these percentiles that's a little lower, we could pick some value, whereas like that shows us some good signal. And again, like I mentioned, we're probably going to also want to do some normalization in terms of days to make sure that each team, and you're comparing apples to apples in terms of giving each, you're not penalizing an account that signed up late. You want to like look at the total events that happen per day of that account. For this kind of more simplistic model, I really do want to just capture a high degree of that signal to make sure that we're able to capture those accounts and potentially like some of these accounts that are found here that don't have a deal associated would be really good places to start, as it does seem like the number of events, the orders that are built by corporate that happen with corporate users, like these accounts definitely seem like they should be reached out to as potential deals. So I think this would be a pretty good signal to potentially pick a number, maybe the first quartile. So anything that's over 40 is worth going after. And let's take a look at how many of those accounts there are, just to make sure that kind of for the Jaffel Gaggle sales team, let's say that there are 2 people and we want them to start working deals in December, probably can work about like 20 deals a person, so about 40 deals. So that's kind of also one of the restrictions that we want to do, where that's going to make sense for us to do. So the weighted amount equal to 0, and you have to do the, always forget to do the tuple wrapping, but I will not forget this time. And we also want the number of orders corporate greater than 40. Okay, so that is going to come out to 186, which is going to be a little higher. So we might have to shoot a little bit higher in terms of some of that signal. But what we can do is we can see kind of the total, and we can look at also the size of this list too. So let's do a quick blend. So 123. So if we miss like any percentile that we go up, we're going to miss some signal here. But maybe potentially let's try to check out like at 51, what that would look like. So there we have 125 rows, which seems pretty reasonable. Again, going back to those numbers, we had that's going to exclude 3/4 of the data of deals that had not been created. So that would make sense to potentially grab that top quarter there. And at 51, we're going to miss out on the bottom third of those deals that were created. And we can also do a quick look at what that would be for some of those high value deals. But that seems like a potential first rule that we could look at would be to just kind of indicate off of that variable that makes the most sense. And then we can kind of take it from there as we start to potentially score some of these deals. And we can also, this is a very naive example. We're just looking at one variable. We probably want to factor in a couple. But kind of to Ella's point, we definitely do want to like be strategic about which ones we consider. And then this is also, again, the other point, to Parth's point, which is how badly do they want to be an account versus how badly we want them to be an account. If we're looking at number of employees and whether or not this actually fits kind of the kind of clients that we're going to launch. And again, kind of a shout out to Brett at Retina, who has some really great content and some great thinking about kind of plotting that as a matrix. That's super interesting. So that's kind of where I wanted to get to. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I really appreciate everyone hopping on, and if there are any questions, please let us know. And in terms of Ali, I see your question about kind of the Slack channel. That's on the operationalanalytics.club website, and you can kind of join that way. We'd be happy to chat. Thanks, Ali, for posting that. We'd be happy to kind of have some more conversations about this, as well as walk through some of how some of our clients are doing this. This was a toy example, and hopefully it was fun to just see and think about this for like an hour. So really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me on a Friday. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask them now. Oh, Nicole asked a couple questions, which were, kind of not familiar with DBT, but can I go back and do this later? Absolutely, 100%. And definitely I would recommend kind of picking up the tool. I think it's super helpful and a good way to learn kind of how to do some of this data modeling, building out these these DAGs, these directed acyclic graphs of dependencies for your data, to really pull in some more of that information to really enrich your understanding of your customers and your data. Again, thanks for hopping on. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Donny, for taking us through your live action processing this workshop. It was really helpful to see. I always see like the polished version of people working through problems on webinars, and it is nice to see like what the real time thing is, because it can be a lot more reflective of like how I would experience trying to learn it. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And to everybody who stuck around and hung out with us and watched the session, we hope this was useful. And like Donny said, if you have any questions, he's in OA Club. We'd love to hear from you, and he would love to chat about this. And we'll also have some content on account scoring models coming out in the next couple weeks too. So there's a lot of resources on our side that'll be available to you. So yeah, thanks again, everybody, for coming to Summer Community Days.